It is day 31 of the war with Iran, and here's where things stand. As gas prices nationwide are set to top $4 a gallon, and as the oil supply crisis costs the country at least 10,000 jobs a month, according to one estimate, there are signs that a select group of insiders are reaping big rewards. As for the war itself, Donald Trump is considering putting boots on the ground and once again threatening strikes on Iranian power plants. Both options represent a major escalation in a war that is already deeply unpopular with the American people. Donald Trump today said there has been, quote, great progress in talks, but warning that if the U.S. and Iran do not strike an agreement, the United States will launch strikes on civilian infrastructure, including power plants and desalination plants, which would threaten the water supply for millions. It's also something that is prohibited under international law. If you're getting any sense of deja vu, it's not you and you're not alone. New York Times reports this, quote, the president has repeatedly threatened such attacks in recent weeks, only to back down as the global economy reels from the risk to energy supplies. Now, all that is happening as U.S. officials tell the Wall Street Journal this, quote, Trump is weighing a military operation to extract nearly 1,000 pounds of uranium from Iran, a complex and risky mission that would likely put American forces inside the country for days or longer. Experts warning that, quote, any move to seize the uranium by force would be complex and dangerous, ranking among the most challenging operations ordered by Trump. The potential operation, which would likely trigger retaliation from Iran, could also lengthen the war well beyond the 4 to 6 week time frame that Trump's team has publicly outlined. U.S. officials telling the Washington Post this, quote, the Pentagon is preparing for weeks of ground operations in Iran. Any potential ground operation would fall short of a full-scale invasion and could instead involve raids by a mixture of special operations forces and conventional infantry troops, according to officials. All this reporting in both the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Washington Post about troops on the ground, all of it flies in the face of what Trump has promised and has been saying publicly for his part. He told the Financial Times today that he had achieved his goal of regime change, even though the head of the regime is the son of the last leader. He told Bloomberg that Iran wants to, quote, settle, and that the war is going unbelievably well. Now, if any of that is the case, you might wonder why ground operations are being considered in this, the fourth week of the war, when the war was supposed to end after, quote, 4 or 5 weeks, as Donald Trump told the New York Times on March 1st. Trump's bluster and threats and conflicting public messages and the Trump administration's ongoing planning to send ground troops into Iran also flies in the face of what the American people say they want. A poll out today shows that just 29% of Americans approve of the war with Iran as it is now, and just 8% support sending ground troops into Iran. Those horrific poll numbers for Donald Trump should come as no surprise, given that at no stage in any of this has Donald Trump addressed the country or tried to communicate with the country about what we're doing in Iran, why we're there, how long we plan to be there, what the metrics for success will be. He's not tried to sell the war to the public, even as Americans continue to experience incredible economic distress and pain because of the war. Sure to add to the fury voters are feeling about $4 gas and rising prices and weakened job prospects is this reporting from NBC News, quote, a flurry of bets made prior to major announcements about the Iran war have ramped up speculation that individuals or groups with advanced knowledge of U.S. military plans are cashing in on insider information. Data suggests traders with advanced knowledge of geopolitical events may have collectively pocketed millions from recent bets on Polymarket. Last month, in the run-up to the latest round of American and Israeli attacks on Iran, some $529 million was traded on the platform, tied to the timing of the strikes, end quote. Growing concerns about an escalation in the war with Iran, even as the economic pain from Donald Trump's war of choice deepens, is where we start today. Senior video and national security correspondent for The Wall Street Journal, Shelby Holliday, is back. Also joining us, retired U.S. Army Brigadier General Steve Anderson's here, and political analyst, former Senator Claire McCaskill is here as well. General, I start with you. Your thoughts on where the conversation between the president, the commander-in-chief in the country, stands right now?
Well, thank you, Nicole. It's great to be with you again. And the president and his advisors are in the midst of, I believe, the greatest geopolitical disaster in the history of our country. And they have completely mismanaged this war. And to even talk about putting boots on the ground in any capacity, be it Kharg Island, be it the Straits of Hormuz, or God help us if they try to go into Isfahan or Fordow to try to retrieve nuclear material. I mean, it would be an absolute disaster. But we have the basic problem in this entire campaign is when I was a cadet at West Point 50 years ago, we studied Sun Tzu, and one of the things he said was, know the enemy as yourself. We do not know this enemy. The IRGC are committed religious fanatics, and there's no fanatic like a religious fanatic. These people, 200,000 strong, running the IRGC, are absolutely committed, and they are in a holy war against us, the great Satan. They're not fighting for Iran. They're fighting for Allah. They're fighting for Islam. And we have not recognized that they are in the middle of an existential threat to them. It's a kill or be killed situation. They're going to do everything possible to beat us and to outlast us. And if we think that we're going to be able to go take Kharg Island and we're going to diminish their revenues, that they care about that is ludicrous. The CIA studied these people. And they have an assessment of regime change, the likelihood of regime change. One of the things that they study is what is the likelihood that the regime is willing to kill its people at an industrial level. Industrial level, that's exactly what the Iranians have demonstrated back in January when they killed 30,000 of their own people. The CIA's assessment is that regime change would be extremely unlikely in that kind of a situation. So we are in an incredible fight. And we owe it all to Donald Trump.
What does it mean, given what you just laid out about the enemy, for those ground troops if Donald Trump does what Donald Trump said he's thinking of doing, sending ground troops into Iran?
What it means is Americans are going to die. Americans are going to die in a place like Kharg Island. It is a very, very difficult fight. This is going to be a contested assault. Be it the 31st MEU, be it the 82nd Airborne. I mean, I have no doubt that the military will prevail ultimately. I have great confidence. I mean, they've been performing superbly. But this is an example of Trump once again using the army and using the military as his own personal militia versus Americans' military. What he needs to do is be focused on conducting diplomacy. But instead, he's using the military because they're acquiescent, because they have to, because they were raised like I was, to be responsive to civilian leadership. And he's taking advantage of that. And he's going to put boots on the ground. He's going to get people killed. Now, the Iranians know that we're coming. So think about everything they're doing at Kharg Island right now, okay? They're building booby traps. When I was in Iraq, we had these explosive-formed projectiles, EFPs, roadside bombs that Senator McCaskill knows very, very well, killed hundreds and hundreds of Americans using this kind of technology that they developed 20 years ago. They're going to have all kinds of roadside bombs spread out across that island. They have caves, they have tunnels, they have asymmetric threats. They got boats, speedboats. They can ram into to the USS Tripoli and the other amphibious vehicles that are coming on board. They're going to be within artillery range, so they're going to 15 miles away. So they're going to be rolling out howitzers from these caves, these mountainous areas that are surrounding Kharg Island. They're going to use missiles. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, has suggested earlier that about 90% of the missile capability, missile launches, have been knocked out. That's not true. Now we found today that there's really only a third of their missile capability has been degraded, and only a third of their drones. They're going to be firing drones. I mean, it's going to be a very, very difficult fight. They're going to use all their capabilities to beat us. They're going to mine the harbors. They're going to be mining all the landing sites. It's going to be a tough fight. And for what? So that we can get control of the oil to try to somehow acquiesce or change this regime to change their tenor towards us. It's not going to happen. This is going to be a terrible, terrible mistake if they do this.